All right, welcome back to Building a Business. I'm Ryan Harper with Brian Shepler. This series is a process of going through how to build a business. Our first episode, we talked about having an idea that matters, how to solve problems, ideas that solve problems. That went into the next episode, which was about team building and having the right team members around you. So this episode is what's next. So Brian, we have an idea that hopefully solves a problem. We have the right people in the right seats. Then what do we do?
Execution. Easy as that, right?
Yeah. Just pull the trigger and go.
Just point everybody in the right direction and wind them up and go.
So what does that mean, though? Podcast over. Yeah, we're done. No.
Wow. So there's a lot there. So obviously, depending on the type of business, the stage that you're at in the business, things can vary dramatically in the business. I'll try and draw on some of my experiences to kind of guide the discussion along. I think after we put our core team together that we felt was going to get us to that next level, and everybody has an idea of what is that next level. Well, it's hard to describe at the beginning, but it's basically what I would say: you're up and running, you have product that you're generating, or you've built product, a web application, or manufacturing, whatever the case is, and you've moved beyond prototype phase. You've moved beyond being able to confirm in your mind that it's a valid endeavor that you've started, and that there's something there. You can make something of this. That can take some time. It could be quick in a matter of months. It could take a couple years. Just really, again, it depends. I've just recently been closely following one of my co-founders from the other business. He started a few other businesses as well, and he's taking it through this level right now to where he has validated the approach, validated the product, has customers starting to purchase the product, and now he's looking at what's next. He's got the core group of team members in place to solve all the problems. And so now it's a matter of how do we build, how do we scale, how do we execute? How do you build this business into something that's repeatable and basically you can be successful?
So if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like what you're saying is like it's the actual doing part. Your execution is like, hey, we've thought about it, we have an idea about it, maybe we've built a prototype, but now it's like, okay, person A, person B, person C, you have a job, move forward, and let's progress.
Exactly. We talked about building your team, and this is where you will lean on your team a lot in order to get the most out of them, have everybody pulling for that common goal. And, it's sometimes successful, sometimes it's not. You do have to go through this and pivot quickly. And you'll rely on these team members to help. Everybody has to be pulling their weight, so to speak, and get to that next level.
So if you're doing an established business, like, hey, you want to do an insurance company, the insurance companies are a dime a dozen. Hey, I need, or a loan company, I need to get a loan officer, and they kind of know that field. But if you're building a company and you truly have a new thing, and maybe you don't have SOPs in place, how do you develop that? Is that just working? Hopefully you have the right people in place and they help you develop that. And then over time you have that SOP.
That's actually the fun part. when there isn't a map, when there's no other business that is doing what you want to do or what your idea is. That happens a lot in the high-tech industry. But there's nothing wrong with employees who have spent a good part of their life in insurance or in the medical field or in manufacturing, and they have an idea that'll make things easier, better, less friction, and they want to start off a business and do solve the same problems but in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as far as when you have something new, there's no map. So I think you're a big proponent of just go try something.
Yeah.
And if it's successful, great, continue. If it's not, try something else.
Yeah, and like we use a software called Airtable. Airtable is just basically like a smart spreadsheet, but we use that for all of our content and all of our organization of workflows and whatnot. And I have a bad habit personally of having a new idea for how to do it and then putting it on this spreadsheet, but not doing it over here. So, and if you've let me, I'm that bull in the china shop that'll just break everything. And then it wasn't until Naomi stepped in and she basically made them all uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's a much more understandable process. And just by that one little tweak and just like making it all uniform is helping those workflows, because, I've made countless flow charts, but flow charts are worthless if you can't enact them, if you can't execute on them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've always struggled with, or what I say I struggle with, is building those processes. But I think, like you said, I secretly enjoy it. It's just hard. How do you implement it?
And processes are good to a point. I think in the early stages, you don't want to get bogged down with processes either. I think processes are good once you have an established rule, product, way of doing things, and you want to have repeatable and consistent results. That's a perfect time to implement processes. Processes are also very helpful for bringing in new employees and the training process, so that everybody does things the same way. But at the very beginning phases, process, you could get mired in the details and lose sight of what you're actually trying to accomplish. So I would be a proponent of less process at the beginning, more process as you begin adding more employees and need that consistency, whether it's consistency of what you're building or consistency with how work is done.
So with me, I've been doing a lot of, and we talked in depth about team members and trusting those team members, but like I've hopefully conveyed this to everyone about when it comes to processes. If you have something better, please tweak it, please manipulate it or alter the process to make it a better, effective workflow. And but again, though, it's just, I think the repetition of doing it. Even with the studio, it's with Sohail being the producer, it's like, hey, it's time in the seat, time in doing it. And it's just those processes like, hey, do we have SD cards? Do we have hard drives? Do we have, is the lens clean? Is all these little things. Now, if you put in a checklist, it would be a nightmare, just because there's you would get bogged down in the process versus just doing the thing. But I think I don't know what I'm trying to say, but time and place, I guess.
It really, I guess it depends. I think process is good, but that's not the first thing you should be worried about when you're building your business.
So what is?
Getting it done. You have to build a product, and you can do that without process in the early phases, and your team may be more efficient that way. You don't want to tell them how to do things. You don't want, like you said, you don't want to keep them confined within the lines. You want them to explore. You want them to use creativity. You want to have them be part of the solution, and that can involve changing the way things are done or defining the way things are done.
So on that, how do you personally build that culture? How do you instill that in your team members to be like, look, you have a voice? Because you can say all day, I can tell people all day, like, hey, your opinion's valid, your voice is valid. I want to hear it, but some people are different. They may not actually hear what I just said. They may be like, you say that, but maybe you don't. So is there alternative ways to convey that other than just flat out saying it?
You have to demonstrate it. In addition to saying it, you demonstrate it with your actions. So you give a lot of responsibility to your team members. You let them, the course of action through your daily activities. You may do things differently than they do, but you can't do everything. And you want to build that ownership in the team members. You want to build, the individualism and the business, problem solving. You want to encourage that. And in order to do that, go with their solutions. It's in the world of programming, there's 10 different ways to accomplish a task through programming, through code. The way I would do it would almost certainly be different than somebody on my team would do it. Although we'd get to the end at the same point at the end, everything would work. And so instead of me telling them do it this way, I'd let them come up with the solution. And as long as it works properly and checks all the boxes, then we go with what they came up with. And that's as a leader or as a manager, you have to do that. That instills the responsibility within the team, and it instills ownership in the team and builds the type of employees that you need to go forward and to be successful.
So what about when the ball is dropped?
So that I've seen this happen, or not happen. I've seen this handled many ways, and it really depends on where the employee came from. If they came from large organizations, I'll generally say that discipline is used within large organizations, and people don't want to fail. So that, for the most part, kind of feeds into how they become managers or how they drive teams.
So when you say discipline, though, what do you mean?
Slap in the hand when they fail.
Like just publicly?
Not a humiliation, but
okay.
But they make a point that they failed at something and don't do it again, or you shouldn't have done this. Emphasizing the negative things.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you come out of small business, I see a lot more of it's okay to fail.
Right.
That's part of getting, to the end result. You have to be able to fail in order to get a good solution. If you're scared of failing, you're going to be scared of starting.
So one thing I heard years ago, and I'm probably going to butcher where I got it from, and I don't know if it's a Chinese proverb or if it's a Japanese. I know it came from that part of the world, and it was something to the effect of we don't really care whose fault it was, we just want to fix the thing.
Right.
And that's, I try to live that, and I try to do that because and it's interesting though with especially with VAs that are in the Philippines, It's, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, I don't want to say I don't care, but that's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to find the solution to whatever the mess up was.
Yeah.
You know, even here, it's like, okay, Ryan, you messed up. It doesn't matter. How do we fix that, and how do we prevent it from doing that again?
Yeah. Well, that goes back, what we talked about a little bit last time, which is choose your words carefully. Use words that bring people together instead of dividing people in teams. Right? So, oh, you made a mistake, right? Oh, you what did you do? What did you do wrong? Use the word we.
Right.
And it's, okay, what did we do wrong here? That is a tremendous, way to handle a problem instead of what did you do wrong? You immediately, you're taking a much calmer approach, not throwing somebody under the bus, and with just some simple words and maybe the tone that you use.
One thing I always say, and almost to a fault, which is, hey, it's my fault. And it is my fault as a business owner if there's a mess up, because it most likely is because I didn't convey enough information for the team member to adequately do the thing. And I acknowledge that, but I think that's that whole Jocko Willink extreme ownership thing. If you're late to work because there was a wreck, well, it's still your fault. You didn't leave. You didn't account that there's going to be a wreck. So you're late to work because you had your car blew up because, well, did you get an oil change? So it's that whole extreme ownership. So how that I apply that here is anytime there's anything, even though, Sohail, I'm gonna throw you under the bus. Sohail's fault. Everybody knows Sohail. Well, it's my fault because X, Y, Z. That's just an example. Sohail he's not in trouble or nothing. It's just, he's the only one that's in this room. Anyway. But I don't know what my point to that is, other than, just taking ownership of maybe not going back to the process and making sure all that's in line.
It does matter, how your team perceives you're viewing them, and the more you can bring the team together, not divide the team, not have them be worried about failing, but have them more concerned with coming up with a solution and teaching them that it's okay to mess up. Just, as long as it's not malicious and as long as you learn something from it. Now, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, well, now we need to talk.
Yeah, there was before anyone in the company was here, is maybe a year and a half ago, maybe a little over a year and a half ago, we did a full podcast with one of our clients and we didn't record the audio. And it was complete egg on my face, egg on the team's face. And at the time I was rightfully so furious, but again, I didn't have the skills to be able to convey that. And I didn't. I just went in the other room, was just like, ah.
Yeah.
But the reason I was furious was the team members at the time were, I told them very often, it's like, look, if you've got it and you want me out of the way, just tell me to go away. But you need to have it. They were like, we got it, go away. Okay, I went away, and they obviously didn't have it.
So how did you handle that?
We figured out what the problem was. We did training on how to fix that problem, and then we put a sticky note on the TV that says check audio.
Yeah.
And I think that sticky note stayed there for the longest time. And I don't know when we moved to the new studio if that sticky note came with us, but I do know with like Sohail, when he started training on this, it was like, hey, these green bars, if they're not here, we're not recording audio. Yeah. So no matter what, that's the last first thing you need to look at before we push record.
So that kind of plays back to what we were talking about earlier with operating procedures. Well, that's something that the recording of a podcast you're going to do that over and over and over. Once you establish how it should be done, then you should put the standard operating procedures in place.
Like a binder.
Pardon me?
Like a binder.
I mean, it can be a binder, it can be a sticky note, however you get it done. It's that plan that you follow so that you can get consistent results.
Well, and just to go down further this rabbit hole, like even that's ever evolving. Because it was just a week ago we decided, because every one of these is cut up. You have your main, and then you have these clips, and then you have reels. And so like this one piece of content will be 20, 30 pieces of content. The new the new SOP is each feed is recorded separately. That way, if you say something brilliant, but accidentally the camera's on me, when we go in to cut those up, we'll have a dedicated feed of you, or vice versa. Because if you only record the program feed, well, then you're playing without a net. So now the new SOP is like, look, we have unlimited Dropbox. Let's just it's 5 more minutes worth of work to record and put it on there. But again, that's just that ever evolving process. Not to make this podcast about podcasting, but building the business of, So as far as the
let's get back
execution,
right? It is important to get your business running the way you want it to run, and producing what you need to produce from your business, whether it's podcasts, product, software, something off an assembly line. And once you get to that point, you're again validating that the business model has legs. You need to be able to make sure you can make money. How much did it cost us to do this? How much revenue can this generate for us? Is there a revenue model there that works? In the case of podcasts, you could. It's not as easy to monetize that, because it's something that could live on for years if the content is not stale. And so, in the case of software, you can write software one time and sell it in an unlimited number of times. It's a little bit different in the case of manufacturing, where you have to manufacture a widget and you get to sell it once.
I think the only caveat to that, not caveat's not the right word, but the what's the phrase I'm looking for? The exception to that would be like in the early days of like YouTube, where YouTube, because all the video, because back then, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and even now to some extent, your server sizes, the how much data, how much access to data, how much hard drive space, all those things is extremely expensive. And, over time that price has come down, but back then, like even Facebook, I think that's why they lost money so much in the early days, or Amazon, because you make X, but your fees are here,
And you're also building the business, right?
Right.
You have to put the infrastructure in place in order to make the revenue. It's like building a factory. Well, yeah, you have to expend money to build a factory, and you're not going to be profitable year one. It might take 10 years to start making money. But yeah, those are things you have to take into account. It is possible you're not going to be revenue positive, or I should say it's possible you won't be making money end of year 1 or 2. But what's important is your revenues. Maybe it's okay that you're spending $2 to make a buck. That's not a sustainable model, but maybe it's okay in the beginning if that revenue never declines. If you're always chasing revenue, and there's no subscription model, no recurrence, then it becomes a little more difficult. What you want to do is have a business that's on the other end of that, like Google, the AdWords, where people pay you to click on or to send traffic to them. And once you have that built, it just runs. Obviously, software needs maintenance with additional features and new technologies, but once you have that core in place, you don't have to go back and touch much of it if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. Once you build the search engine, it runs. It runs every night. It runs every day. It's just out there serving up requests.
So it's interesting to me because the last episode we kept talking about team building. And I think your team members, because they're so important, are always going to be relevant in any video we do about the process of building a business. But, especially with this episode talking about the execution and the processes and maybe processes aren't as relevant as people think they are. I had a point here. I forgot it. I think I was trying to get to where with me specifically with this business, and one of the things that you said to me months ago, it's the people. It's the people that matter. You got to build the people up because the people is what builds the business. The people is what drives your core.
If all the people leave in a business, is there anything left?
Right.
I mean, I could argue no.
Right. And I think we talked about the example of like the space program, how when you have these engines and when the people are no longer there, they can't build those engines. And people are like, that's why space is fake, because if we went to the moon 50 years ago, can't do it again. What's going on? Or 60 years ago now. But anyway, how I'm doing that here is really trying to build the people up, really trying to build those phases in the not phases, but the processes. And it's even interesting to me how quickly there's stuff that I used to do all the time that I don't have to do at all. And the stuff that Sohail's doing, I used to do that by myself. Mm-hmm. The stuff that Margot's doing, I used to do that by myself. To some extent, the stuff that Paul does, I would never say I'm a videographer or an editor, but I mean, if I had to pick up a camera and shoot and edit and put something together, I could. So it's just interesting how when you bring in people to build out and hopefully execute, how quickly the structure builds itself in some ways. I don't know if I had a point. I think it was just vamping.
It's execution. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. So what am I missing here in this discussion?
There's tons that could be discussed. Every business is a little bit different.
Right.
How about retention?
Retention of clients, retention of people, retention of technology?
Yes. How hard is it to replace an employee who leaves?
I wouldn't know when they leave because no one leaves. They love it here.
That means you're doing something right.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think there's always, I'm to a fault too nice. I try to go over my head, and I've been told a couple of times, like, hey, you could be a little more stern if you have to.
Okay. Are you consciously doing anything to foster an environment here that people want to stay?
Yes. I go, and I've gotten compliments from Paul's girlfriend, Madison, who is in the branding world. Like, I consciously go above and beyond for like company swag, as far as like the Yetis or the polos or the shirts. Are those expensive asset? Absolutely. But hopefully it fosters a community. It fosters a team. I've worked at places that it was pulling teeth to get a rubber band. So, and I'm sure everybody has those types.
They want to be proud of where they work, right?
And that's what I want.
Say, hey, this is my business.
Yeah.
I work here. I'm a big part of this.
So
I make a difference.
Yeah, and there's like little things like when somebody joins a team, I give everyone a pocket knife. It's not branded, but it's just, hey, my grandfather always had a pocket knife, and he was a firm believer that you should always have a pocket knife. So I'm a firm believer you should always have a pocket knife, whether you use it or not. It has nothing to do. But that's just, hopefully that's a part of me, part of the culture. But it's a gift to you. Use it, don't use it. But I'm probably going to give you grief if you don't have one. Have it on you. You want to open that box? Where's your pocket knife? But cheekily. The Yetis are big. We go to lunch a lot. But those things I'm very conscious of.
So that I would agree. I rarely find employees who don't want to do a good job. I would say that almost everybody that I've come across, they want to do a good job in their work. They want to be challenged. They want to do a good job. They want to feel like they've made a difference and they contribute. And if you can foster an environment where that all happens, I think that it'll go a long way towards having happy employees, happy teams that are willing to do more than what's expected, and you'll have better retention, which goes back to execution. If you lose a key person or even a key part of a team, it's hard to build that back up.
Well, yeah, it's because in my mind, a new person coming to the team, in my head, they're not going to be firing on all cylinders for at least 3 months. Their first week or two is just fish out of water. What am I doing here? What is this place? And again, going back to proper team members is finding people, especially here at this company, you need to have that ability to find stuff to do, find a hole and fill it. Mm-hmm. Because, I'm not a very good, I'm not a micromanager, but I'm also not looking over your shoulder going, oh, you have nothing to do. Let me give you something to do. So and again, going back to that trust, if you're on the team, I trust you. So I'm just so I haven't talked to Sohail all day, just maybe a few minutes before we started this podcast. But I'm not in my office going, what is Sohail doing? Mm-hmm. Is he working? Paul, everybody, all the team members, are they working? Because there's that instilled trust. And again, you hope and you want people to like what they're doing and mm-hmm. where they work and everything. But I think the trust factor, hopefully that's conveyed. Hopefully the stress isn't taken personal or anything like that. But, because it's stressful. Running a business is stressful.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And you want to try and shield a lot of your team from that, if you can, because there's, in the early days you wear your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah.
And things can go up, things can go down in minutes. You could be highest high, lowest low in the same day, and you need to be the buffer between. Yeah. You need to keep your team focused, energetic, positive, and shield them from as much of the negative stuff as possible. Generally, I've always tried to be open about how the company was doing, whether it was good or bad. Luckily, it was almost always good in the recent past, and so I would have also said, hey, we're not doing as well this quarter or this first half or this year. I think it's better if that environment is open, truthful, and hey, they're adults. They, to some extent, everybody can handle the truth, and most people want that instead of painting a rosy picture. Yeah, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. And then a week later.
Well, I think that's one thing that I need to work on personally is realizing that, hey, I am the boss. I am the owner. I do need to have that role of shielding versus being one of the guys, one of the team members. So like in the Marines, there's this saying that, Marines bitch. Like, they're just going to bitch and complain and moan. They're Marines. What else are they going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're still going to do the thing, but they're going to complain about it. And what I have to get better at is realize that, in that, yes, I'm part of the team, but I also need to be the leader of the team, and the leader of the team cannot complain and moan and bitch, because again, it just trickles down and everybody does that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I need to work on, and I'm conscious of that. Have I made efforts to fix that? I'm working on it.
It is amazing if you do take a negative attitude or complain
Right.
in front of your team, they will take that and they'll start complaining themselves.
Yeah.
So I've seen that happen, and I don't mean complain like in their jobs. I'm just, negative things happening.
If you act like there's a cloud, there's a cloud. If you act like there's sunshine, there's sunshine.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, it's because I don't have that work-life balance. It's just work, work, work. And I don't really have those
that is balance.
Work, work, work.
It is. It's what you choose.
This is true.
Right? So
yeah.
Not to go off topic here,
No.
but it's I hear that a lot, work-life balance. And it really, when I hear that, it usually is in the context of, I want to work 8 hours and that's it, a day. And when I go home, I don't want to think about work. Okay. Well, when a company grows to a certain size, there's places for those types of employees. Absolutely. You need those employees that will contribute their 8 hours and then they go home. But you also need the others. That the balance, it's like this. This is, it's steady, but there's still a lot of energy and a lot of work and a lot of time that's devoted to the business. Mm-hmm. And you can't be successful without that.
But when you do have stress, how do you release that?
Okay.
Because like in my case, most of the time, I would say the only people I have human interaction with are the team members here or clients.
So it's interesting that you bring that up.
And I don't have a therapist. So,
but sometimes you're your best therapist too. What I mean by that is you need time for yourself to think and to solve problems. And the way that I did that is through exercise, through running. And from the early days of starting our business, I would get up early, do a little bit of work, and then go run. And at the same time, I had small kids in the house, so it was also getting up before they woke up. And I'd get about an hour's worth of work in, go out and run, sometimes pretty long distance, and I'd use that time as my alone time. And you deal with the problems that you had either the prior day or the current day they're coming, or you try and solve issues that you're currently having. How should I deal with this? Or how do I fix this particular problem? How should I deal with this employee who's running into some difficulties at work, whatever they might be? That is, I would say that's the first thing that people should do, whether it's exercise on your own or group exercise, something about the physical exertion, it does help relieve stress.
And when you're doing that, are you listening to music? Are you listening to like an audiobook, or are you just in solemn silence?
It depends. So
Just
if you're
to
listening,
concentrate.
if I'm listening to music, it's kind of in the background. And
Right.
it's just a little bit of noise that's back there.
Like a
And so
metronome type thing.
and I don't have to listen to the words. I don't have to know what they're saying, but it helps my brain have something to hear besides what I'm talking through in my head.
So I'm like that all the time when it comes to music. And it used to drive an ex-girlfriend of mine crazy because she loved lyrics. And there's songs that one of my favorite songs lately. It took me three months to realize that it wasn't even in English. I was like, this is a good song. I like this song. But the way it's the music goes and the way the words are coming, if you're not listening to the words, you're not. I didn't know it was not English. So I'm like that. Like if you go into my office, Spotify is immediately on. And there's songs that it'll take me a minute or two to realize, oh, this isn't a very good song. Let me fast forward, And sometimes people walk in and like, why do you have a Christmas song on? I'm like, I didn't realize that was on. My bad. I'll take that off that playlist.
So
Back to the point. Sorry.
it kind of, so that goes hand in hand with what I've been hearing lately about successful people getting up early and doing work early in the day. And I would tend to agree with that. I think from my perspective, it's that alone time. When busy people during the day, they interact with a lot of people. And so they don't get time to focus and to do their individual work, whether it's to solve problems or to actually work on things. And I think that time is crucial, and you do need to carve that out in the day.
Yeah, it's a lesson I learned from my father from years ago that I've never implemented. Well, I've tried to start implementing lately, which is he would go to the office at 6, 7 in the morning. And the reason being is that's the only time he can get any work done. Because once 9 o'clock hit, he was emails, phone
Everybody's
calls,
at their door,
meetings. So the only time he could actually do any work was that 6 to 8, 6 to 9 time frame. So, and that's one thing that I've complained, which I will now work on and not complain about, which is like now I try to get here at 8:30ish. I didn't today, but sometimes I try at 8:30. It's a work in progress, but that way I can get an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours of.
Can you work at home?
I do work at home.
Okay. But
I work at home at night. When I get up, I just get up and come.
And sometimes it makes a difference where you're working. Being in your office with the surroundings, you might work differently here than you do at home.
Mm-hmm.
The physical differences as well. Desks, chairs, monitors, computers, they're different. They can be different.
I did something the other day that I think you'll appreciate because we were talking about how in Texas right now the weather is so beautiful, and we'll have a week or two of this before it gets either hot again or nasty. But the other day I just went out, sat on the patio here at the office, and just listened to an audiobook for 30 minutes while I was just fiddling on my phone. Mm-hmm. And it was just so refreshing to go out there, just to be outside, enjoy the weather, and just zone out for a minute. Yeah. And I need to start doing that more and more. But
it's helpful. It certainly is. Yeah, everybody has to find something, some release, some relaxation, whether it's exercise or just time alone to think, or just to veg out on something else that is not work, because your brain's always thinking, and that's there's been many times where I've woken up in the morning and my brain has solved a problem because it was working on something all during my sleep, apparently. And so the solution came to me when I woke up. And, that's your brain always is working. So give it a rest sometimes.
That's one of the things. My buddy Tyler, he's my best friend and whatnot. He, anytime we're talking about stuff that stresses me out, or there's a problem that he sees that he knows that I need to fix, he'll throw it out there. He's like, "Don't answer it. Just think about it. Your brain will solve it."
That's looking back.
But he addresses it and puts it out there.
Looking back on a lot of the important moments in our business, decisions we made, or products we built, software problems we solved, a lot of those came, they were, in the end, they were very simple or small, right? Not huge, elaborate things, but it involved a lot of thinking. And usually the best work we did was thinking through problems instead of diving headlong into it. Like you said, put it in the back of your head, think about it, think about the best way to solve problems or to address issues, and it'll work itself out.
What about escape? Like, do you ever, like for me, like, and maybe the word escape is too hard, but like when I watch movies or I listen to an audiobook or I watch Netflix or whatever, or YouTube, it doesn't matter what I'm doing it to escape. Like Tyler, we bring him back up. When he watches movies, he wants to be challenged. He wants to think. He wants there to be some kind of thing where I like movies that are just like junk food for the brain, where I could just shut off and just 2 hours later, hour and a half later, be like, cool, that was fun. And just, and I say escape because you can leave any issues, any baggage, any stress at the door while you're pursuing that. Like lately, I've been on an audiobook kick. I've never done audiobooks my whole life. And recently, I think I've gone through 35, 40 in the last like 3 or 4 months.
So that's interesting you say that. I've listened to audiobooks in the past, and I always find myself drifting off and thinking about the problems of the day instead of listening to the audiobook. What do you do?
Well, usually I'm doing it while I'm driving because the commute here is about 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm getting about anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour a day of audiobooks. I'm not paying attention to traffic. That's probably the downside of it.
No, well, you are.
Yeah.
Right. Your brain is driving you through.
Right.
And
again, it's just the escape of, because when I'm here, and when I'm home,
so do you
I'm still
listen?
here.
Do you listen to the audio? I mean, is that the first thing you're hearing? Are you focused on it?
Yeah.
So you know exactly what's happening, and like, are these fictional books?
Both. It started with the Bitcoin Standard because I tried to read that, and I'm like, I'm never. I used to read all the time. I don't have the time to actually sit down and actually force myself to read. I think reading is somewhat of a talent. You have to enjoy it, or you're not going to do it. And I really wanted to consume that just because of my relationships with the people that we know. And so I got Audible and did Bitcoin Standard, and I was like, this was pretty effective and efficient. I was able to knock out a book that I've been trying to read for months in the car in a week or two. And then I just like,
you think you retained the information?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
And then I went through this long fiction series that I read in the 2000s. It was like a 25-book historical fiction series.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the Richard Sharp series. It's I'll just go off on it for a second. It's about it's historical fiction about a soldier in the British Army that rose up from the enlisted ranks to the officer ranks, and he basically leads like almost like the special forces type of unit in the Napoleonic Wars. So muskets and rifles, and anyway, it's a great. I love that series. Did that, and then a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, you should read Ender's Game," which I've heard for years is like one of those magnum opus science fiction books, and I just never. So I've been going through those series. So I've gone through like 10 of those books. So and I'm trying to sprinkle in Like one book I'm in the process of listening to is the Roman history, so I'm trying to sprinkle in stuff that's not junk food that maybe I can get some kind of a leg up on the brain. But for now, I would say 95% just escapism.
Execution.
Yeah, going back to the point of this one. These are fun, right? Where you just like, you go off on a rabbit trail, and it's like, there's nobody to tell you no. It's not like you can't. It's like you can do your own thing. But yeah,
Well,
execution. Yes, sir.
I have a question about, so say you're starting a small business, right? And it's just you or you, the question's about scalability and how important it is. Is it okay to just have a business that doesn't grow, for lack of better terms?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. There are some entrepreneurs who say, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Right.
I understand where they're coming from. I do agree that it's okay to build a business that it establishes a level of revenue. It's a good, healthy business, and it doesn't grow revenue. It just continues at its current pace. It delivers good product, good service. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think my answer to that question would be it depends, because if you have shareholders, you have to grow or you're dying. But if it's a singly owned, like look at newspapers. If newspapers was just owned by a single entity, they wouldn't be hurting as much as they were because they don't have to grow. They have their subscribers.
I think it's not. I think you need to separate growth from being profitable. So shareholders care about profits.
Right.
Now, profits can come in the form of increased revenue, hence increased net worth of the company, valuation of the company, and so the shares that they hold grow in value year after year. Now, then they have to figure out how do they harness that value? Do they sell? Is it okay? They just keep it in their pocket, so to speak, and it grows at some percentage, or do you invest in companies that will actually pay dividends, quarterly dividends or yearly dividends? And in that case, let's say that the gross margins are 30%, but they're not growing. Well, some people would say, well, I'm fine with that, 30% gross margins, and I get dividends and making a nice little profit on my investment. Yeah, the core of your investment, the value doesn't change, but it's spitting off money. And so I think both would work. Both can work.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as the scalability of that, and I think that's more of a later topic, later video, but from the execution, how do you lay the groundwork to be able to get to the point to scale?
Okay, so scalability is important if you want to grow. If you want to build a business that is just a few employees or a set number of employees, you don't have to scale. Scaling is how do you take what you have and make it bigger? That's what scaling is. How do you generate more revenue, or how do you build more product or deliver more services? And so that is, when you hear the word scaling, that's what that's referring to.
It's interesting. A buddy of mine has a fairly successful real estate little firm, maybe 3 to 5 employee types in the company. And they were a part of a mastermind. The mastermind was just trying to, you're wearing too many hats. You need to be the CEO. You need to hire this person, hire this person, hire this person. He's like, I don't want that. Mm-hmm. We do our 30 to 50 houses a year at the time. Now they're doing that a month now because he switched his gears. But at the time of this story, they're doing their 30 to 50 houses a year, making fairly good profit margin on these deals. And he's like, why do I want to work more? I have kids at home. I have a beautiful wife. I want to have family time. Yeah. And it's like hiring all these people sounds like a lot of work. you know?
So it is. But you have to keep in mind when you choose to do that, you're doing it not just for yourself, but you're providing opportunities for your employees. So as employees, a lot of times they want to grow as well. They want to see what their career path is or what possibilities there would be. What if I join your company, what are things I can work on? Where would I enter? What does the career path look like? If I want to go into management, what does that look like?
So that's interesting because like I've never even thought about that, and it probably shows. But like if you're a new company and you say you have those 3 to 5 core team members, and I understand it depends on what you're trying to do and what the company is, but at the beginning, the company is those 3 to 5 people and maybe you and a partner. So for here, like anytime we're hiring another person, it's because there's a role that hasn't been filled that needs to be filled, and then so it's not like we're building a ladder. And maybe that's just because we haven't done the lateral foundation yet.
Right. So what you're experiencing is the scaling piece, and that is you're building out, like you said, laterally. You're adding more people who are doing the same types of work. What you're going to start experiencing is building vertically, which means you're going to run out of time for your direct reports.
Right.
And what I found is, for me, that number to be an effective manager, to be effective in the direction of the team that I was managing, the direct reports was probably 5 or 6 or 7. Once you get beyond that, you don't have enough time to spend with your direct reports to be successful, to have them be successful, because you're still mentoring. That never goes away. You're building and you're educating and you're mentoring your team members so that they can do a better job, so they can enforce the same culture, if you will, work habits in their team that you have in your team. And that's the scaling process, and that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
Maybe for next time. So
one thing that's been not weighing on my mind, but it was just a thought that came to me last night, actually. One of the complaints I had working at a former place 8-10 years ago was I felt like I was just like the guy spinning plates. I don't know if you remember those the old days. Sohail probably has no clue what I'm talking about. But like the old Tonight Show guy, the circus acts that are spinning these plates. And the guy that I worked for, it was just like, metaphorically, just there's another plate. And it's just like, but I'm the guy that has to keep all these up. Mm-hmm. And if I don't continue spinning it, it falls and it breaks and that thing's dropped. So the reason that's relevant now is like, I feel like in some ways that's still me spinning those plates. And, it goes back to how do you, and maybe this is an entirely other video, but it's like, how do you effectively have accountability on roles and people, but at the same time establishing that trust and establishing like ownership.
Yeah. So that's a great analogy. I like that. And I think, let's say that your business today is spinning 5 plates. Well, you can do that yourself, maybe if you're talented, right? But if you want to grow the business, next year it's going to be 7 plates or 8 plates. The following year it could be 12, could be 20. How can you do that? No, you're gonna hit a limit for yourself being able to spin these plates. So
Brian, I have no limits.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm there now. No.
And so you have to hire another plate spinner.
Right.
Or 2. Now, maybe you could spin 6 plates yourself. It'd be great if you can find somebody who can do that same thing. But more than likely, you're going to start off and you're going to find somebody who can spin 3 or 4. That's okay. Hire 2 of them. Now they're spinning plates and you're guiding them, you're educating them, and as they grow, they can spin more plates. But they're going to have a limit too. As your company grows, you need more plates being spun. And so this is, the plates is your business process. It's what your business is producing. It's the programs you're writing if you're producing code. It is the product you're building, or it's the service you're providing.
So say there's a situation where you have someone in a role and they know, everyone knows that the role they're doing should be like 3 or 4 people, but there's no budget for 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
So they're doing it by themselves, but maybe they're only doing it at 40, 50% capacity, or not a capacity, not the word, effectiveness. Like what do you do in that situation? Do you obviously you're always encouraging, but do you step in every once in a while to help lift them up? Or do you just say, hey, I know right now we're in a rough situation, but as we grow, this is a role that somebody's going to come and help fulfill?
Yes. As the business owner, it's your responsibility to give your employees the tools, technologies, and help that they need to do their job. And if you're overloading them, that's okay for a short time period. It's actually one of the ways businesses are managed is you're constantly managing to the point where you don't hire the next position until you know you need it. And then you hire it, and the stress level comes down, and it's kind of, you got this. It's like a wave going up, and once you start overloading people again, well, that's kind of your indicator that you need to hire another person or group of people.
So the question then is, okay, if you're in that situation, but say you acknowledge that, hey, there needs to be a person or group of people to help in that role, but that's not a revenue generating role. That's a maintaining role.
It's a cost center, yeah. Versus
like, hey, this person over here, there's a revenue generating aspect to it. Like, what do you
have to figure? That's one of the problems business owners have to face, and
the joys of small business ownership.
It's tough throwing money at cost centers because they don't generate revenue, but it's important for your business to execute. So you as a business owner have to make the determination of when do you invest in your business and hire more people to support the revenue generating side of the business. That is a great problem to have. That means you're growing and you're balancing where you're spending your money, where what's your budget look like? What are the people that are needed in the back office to support the sales team, for instance? What's needed to produce more product? And yeah, fantastic problems to solve, and it's a balancing act. Absolutely.
Well, because like for here, like there's a whole industry that our company's not even involved in, which is like, even though we're very involved in the content creation and we also post a lot on social media, we're not necessarily social media management, because social media management, there's an implied strategy, there's cultivation, there's all these aspects to brand building on somebody's social media. And I believe the market price for something like that is about $5,000 right now. And that's not even content creation. That's just management. Mm-hmm. So one of the next expansions would be and I've already identified the person that would spearhead that department, is the social media management side.
Yeah.
because the role I'm talking about right now is the poster of all that, and it is it's a cost center. But once it's part of a team that's a potential revenue generator, then it's a much easier. Yeah, let's get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those.
It's your job as a business owner when you hire people is to figure out how they're going to make you more money than it costs to employ them. That's
Emotionally or financially? I'm just kidding.
financially.
Yeah.
And cost centers are part of that.
Yeah.
Cost centers, you have to spend money on that. So how do you use those in your business? How are they going to help your business? If, this is the build versus lease model where, do you hire consultants to come in and do a job, or do you go hire people to do the job?
Yeah, and I'm a fan of building the team, and I've been hit multiple times over the past couple of years from people in this business or even just friends that, hey, why are you hiring? Just find a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm of the mindset I would rather have a team. That way, if I have to throw some BS task at them, I don't have to pay them a crazy amount of money for a contracting BS thing. It's just they're on the team and they can do it.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean I want to throw BS tasks at everybody? No. But I also don't want to spend a ton of money on something that I don't want to spend money on. And I guess that, I probably shouldn't ever be doing that anyway, but sometimes you just have to. So I'm personally more of a fan of having the team versus the
So here's an
contractor.
example. One of the things that a lot of technology companies and a lot of companies in general have to deal with, and that's the technical help desk. Your computer just went kaput. Who do you call? Do you have somebody in-house who handles that? Or do you have a company that you contract with that you call and they'll come out and they bill you on hours? That's an example of the cost center. And you make that decision of not having a salaried position because, yes, building a team is great, but there are some tasks within an organization that it's just as fine to bring in a consultant and just do hourly work.
Right. And I think for this business, there's different jobs, different gigs that we may get that require multiple positions that you wouldn't necessarily have. You wouldn't want to keep that person on full time.
Mm-hmm.
One, you probably couldn't afford them, or two, you wouldn't have the work to sustain
Right.
the cost of them. But at the same time, if I can find roles, I personally prefer the team aspect. And I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's just sports, the military, and just maybe I'm lonely. I don't know.
So let's, roll back the tape here
Execution.
and, the example I just brought up with help desk.
Yeah.
Well, in the early days of startup, you're your own help desk.
Right.
Your computer went out. You know what? Crawl under the desk and figure it out. And if you can't, then we'll probably have to buy you a new one, but try and fix it. Network's down. All right, just go reboot the routers. Things like that.
Yeah.
And, that's the type of attitude or approach
The figure it out ability.
that you need in the startup phase.
Is that a word? Figure out ability? Yeah.
I don't think so.
It could be. It should be.
It should be.
It should be in the Wikipedias.
I will cogitate on that.
That's
and get
it.
back to you.
Oh, look at you. I already forgot what it meant.
Well, he nailed it, though.
So he'll help me out here.
Just look it up real quick.
Was it cogitate?
Cogitate.
I thought I was good with knowing words like edification. You looking up, Soil? No. Oh, here we go. What does that say? There we go. Think deeply. Where'd it go? I lost it.
Think deeply about something,
Oh.
meditate or reflect.
God.
I.e., he stroked his beard and retired to cogitate.
Going back to running your marathons or going on your morning runs, and you're cogitating on
the problems of the day.
The problems of the day.
And solving it, and yes.
So as far as the
That's part
execution,
of execution.
yeah. It feels like execution could just be, a full podcast where you just every week you talk about it, because it could go down so many different paths.
And it really does depend on the type of business and the type of work that you're doing.
Because like some businesses, like if we were looking at a roadmap, and we're like, again, the first episode, which was, if you haven't seen it, watch it. Identifying problems and having ideas worth pursuing, and then it's like the second episode was team building. Well, some businesses go straight to raising capital,
Absolutely.
or some are
I was
just
a part of a business like that.
Yeah. So
which would be a great discussion.
Yeah, maybe that's the next. Maybe raising capital is next. I don't know.
It did a lot to impress upon me how not to run a business.
And how so?
Raising money and throwing it against the wall to see what sticks. Hiring people before you even had a product. And it just, I think when it's your money, you are much more efficient, and you spend that money wisely. Just like the government. Who's a better spender of money, charities or the government?
Right.
Well, most likely it's going to be charities.
It's one thing that I'm always reminded of is a person I used to know. I haven't seen them in, 8 years or so. And at the time they had a startup and they got funding. And the first thing they did was they got a full floor at the those gold buildings on Loop 12 and 75. Mm-hmm. It's not the DoubleTree, but
Capital. No,
I don't know. It's whatever the buildings are called.
Yeah,
but it's at least $25 a square foot. Maybe $28 a square foot. But they got a full floor, and I remember visiting him, and they had their conference table was a ping pong table, and maybe they had enough staff to fill a tenth of the floor, but it was a cool vibe. It was like, hey, we're a cool place to work. And this is before I knew anything much about capital raising. I still don't, but they fell into that trap of they got a lot of money, and the first thing they did was they spent it all.
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, instead of having all this space for employees, maybe have the employees, and obviously they went out of business, but
you run a business differently when you're not spending other people's money.
Yeah. One thing, a compliment I want to give to you is every time I've had lunch with you or met with you and talked with you, I always leave feeling better than going in. And I don't know if that's just your overall vibe.
Maybe it's the lunch.
That too. No, but I think it's because like I'm coming in thinking I'm failing or thinking I'm messing up or thinking, I'm just a horrible business person. And then there's this reassurance of like, no, that's just how it goes, and it's just like everybody does that. Everybody struggles with that. Or, that's actually a good decision, So, and again, I think it's just because I look up to you in the business world, mentor wise, that there's a fear of disappointment, So it's when I get reassurance that it's like, hey, maybe I'm not such a total failure. It's like, all right, cool.
You're far from it.
I'm set for the day.
Far from it.
That's why I wanted to do these as much as possible so I can get the constant reassurance I need.
Yeah. Cool. That's
well, anyway,
good to hear.
Yeah. Well, I think in the past we've kind of wrapped up and said, okay, next week or next episode, we'll talk about this. I think we don't do that anymore. I think we just wrap up. And then when we come in next time, we'll just decide what the next step is. Okay. That way we're not necessarily beholden to anything we decide today.
We kind of chart our own way through it anyway, right?
Right. But it goes back to your brain will decide, we'll fix the problem. So, like, what's next? Well, okay, maybe it's capital raising. Maybe it's goal setting. Maybe it's the phases of the business.
Scaling.
There's so many.
Good.
Whatever's
It's
interesting
good stuff.
at that point in time. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Very good. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe, all those things. Questions below. Where do you want to see these go? And we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching The Merge. This is all the information you need. Don't watch anything else. Only The Merge. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hustle, grind, all those things. Like, subscribe, click, like, comment. I don't know what's going on. Somebody save me.